Hey guys, rxlyaT or Taylor here, and today I'm back with another Dead Matter video. And in this one I want to cover something that is going to be a very big part of Dead Matter, and I don't actually think we've seen this feature anywhere else. That feature is what I'm calling loot over time. Now before we do get into the video, I do just want to say, if you are new here and are enjoying the Dead Matter content, then there's going to be plenty more of it, so I do suggest making sure you subscribe and hit the bell notification. But anyway, with that out of the way, let's jump straight into the juice of this video. So as you'll be well aware, most survival or loot games, they work on timers. Once an area has been looted, a timer will count down until that area will be replenished. Obviously, that's a very rough idea of how looting and survival games work. However, in Dead Matter, it's going to work very uniquely. Loot on the server will start off plentiful, but over time and as the server or the world ages, the amount of loot spawning will actually decrease ever so slightly until it hits a certain lower ceiling, but it will never fully run out or stop spawning, hence why I'm calling it the loot over time feature. This will hopefully encourage me and other players to find other means to survive. So for example, if the loot does reach that lower ceiling, it's inevitably going to be harder to find food and water. So you'll have to think about hunting for some food or even growing it in something like the greenhouses. I mentioned how you're going to get a hold of a greenhouse or how you make these greenhouses in my previous Dead Matter video, so do make sure to check that one out. And for things like water, perhaps you're going to have to make sure you have the water purification supplies, as you'll have to go into the wild to find your source of hydration, whether that's a stream, a lake, or something like that. You will have to purify that water before you do drink it. So to try and make you visualize this loot over time a little bit easier, think of a shelf with 10 possible loot spawns on it. At the start of that server's life, all 10 of those possible loot spawns do spawn loot and hold something for you to grab. But towards the end of that server's life, or when it reaches that lower ceiling, only 4 of those 10 possible loot areas will then spawn loot. So it does really sort of follow that realistic approach to how a real world apocalypse would work. Obviously, once a gas station is looted, you're not going to be able to go back and find some loot that wasn't there the first time. But anyway, a little bit on how and when this loot will respawn. Loot will only respawn when another player hasn't been within a certain distance of said area for a certain amount of time. For example, for the loot to spawn in the gas station, no player can have been within, let's say, a 3-kilometer radius, and for a certain period of time, for example, 2 to 3 in-game days. But do keep in mind they are rough estimates and almost certainly not quite correct, and the time for loot to respawn can be controlled by the admin. However, I don't think the radius can be controlled by the admin. Now, I personally do really like this idea. Of course, we're going to have to see how it works, because in some games it can be frustrating when the loot is very hard to come by, but also that added challenge can be a lot of fun. The other aspect I like about this is always thinking ahead rather than the next town. You'll always need to keep an eye on your resources and making sure you'll have enough to survive for an extended period of time if that loot does hit the lowest possible ceiling. But I do just want to say as well, we don't know how low this ceiling is going to be. I don't think it's going to be near on impossible to find supplies. I just think we're going to see a visible difference between the, let's say, a fresh server and a server getting towards that lower ceiling. I'd love to know what you lot think about this feature. Like I've said at the beginning of the video, I think it's a very unique one, and I personally haven't encountered this in any other survival game, so I do feel like Dead Matter is taking almost a big risk in being the first to try it, but I also feel like it's a risk that needs to be taken within the survival genre to keep it fresh and to keep it exciting, and especially make it challenging. I know that so many survival games have come out and they've just almost failed at the first hurdle because they're like every other one, where it is just get some easy loot, get some kills, and there's no real deep dive into it. I know that DayZ is definitely going down the road of more survival based, where you do need to focus on your temperature, you do need to make sure you've got some supplies of food. So if Dead Matter's doing that, as well as adding more of a realistic survival element to the game, then I'm all for it. But again, like I've mentioned, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, because with no game to base it off of and how to implement it, it's going to be cool. It's certainly going to be interesting. But yeah, that pretty much wraps it up from me today. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, let me know by either leaving a comment or by clicking that like button. And if you are new here, I'd really appreciate it if you did stick around by subscribing, and of course being notified when I do upload by hitting the bell icon. But anyway guys, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye.